I'm Lucy Haze, the biggest Polish trans streamer. Okay, I actually divided my stuff into 3 channels. On this channel, I do gaming, slop, and gaming, and art. Oh yeah, I am. Because apparently everybody's in the Epstein files and it's pretty horrifying. I got a second channel which is for news and war coverage, which is Lucy has a network, which I will link, okay? Because I decided to do like a thing where I just, you know what I mean? I do a separate channel for gaming and slop, a separate channel for news coverage, which is here. Lucy has a network. And most importantly, I also do war journalism. I'm a war journalist a little bit. So I go to Ukraine and I do interviews with families and children about kidnapped children, the situation of children in war. And I started a new channel called Lucy Has a Films, where I upload my interviews and future documentaries. Okay, I will upload documentaries about the war. I've already uploaded two interviews with children. One with a 16-year-old girl that is from Bakhmut and her experience with the war. And the second interview is with a young boy from Zaporizhia and his mother. And they also talk about mental health problems, how they overcome those problems, and how living in a war zone is like as a child. So if you're interested in that, then go to Lucy Has a Films. And I feel it's a valuable thing to share. War journalism. And now we will talk about Epstein. We will talk about Epstein and about how Richard Dawkins, the super transphobe. Richard Dawkins used to be a person that was pretty actually. I feel like Richard Dawkins used to have some form of respect. Like he was treated as this scientist, as this logic guy that would not take no nonsense, and everybody held his opinions high when it came to evolution. He wrote quite a few known books. He famously wrote The Selfish Gene, and Selfish Gene is so known that it even made it into Metal Gear Solid, or at least it made it into Metal Gear Revengeance, The Selfish Gene. And there were a few more books that are known from Richard Dawkins. And then Mr. Dawkins decided to become insane and a big transphobe, and then he completely lost me. Okay. And of course, he defended his buddy, Harris, the guy that was accused of sexual harassment of women. He defended him. And now it turns out that they all have ties to Epstein because, of course. And yes, in case you were wondering, Epstein is Epstein, but I'm not going to read it as Epstein. I'm going to read it Epstein because that is what my culture tells me that I should do. All right, let's watch this video because I pre-watched some of it. Total disclosure.
It happened again. That's right. I mentioned in the Epstein files again.
Imagine being mentioned in the Epstein files. That's damn. And I know what context she's mentioned in the files. She's mentioned as this horrible woman that is harassing the harassers, okay? Epstein and other weird people were, I guess, doing some form of mail exchange, talking about what they should do with her because she's trying to warn people against sexual harassment, I guess, which is bad in this economy.
You probably saw him.
Oh, wait, left Louis West. Would you like to do a collab with me? Would Rebecca be willing to do a collab with me?
My first video.
I'm trying to collab with people. That would be cool.
This topic. Collab. And if so, you probably came away from that thinking that I've spent the past decade being, just as awesome in my private life as I am in my public life. Like you probably.
In fact, it would be great to do an interview.
Thought, wow, there's no way anything could come to light now to change my opinion of Rebecca. So I have to once again offer my sincere apology because, in the latest dump of millions of new files from Jeffrey Epstein's correspondences, more emails about me have come to light. And I'm sorry to say that your opinion of me is probably going to change. because I'm actually even more awesome than you thought.
True. I saw a bit of this video, and that statement is true. God damn. And I did not think that Richard Dawkins and all those people were so pathetic. My opinion of them has changed as well. Even, I don't know, it's even worse now than it was before.
Okay, look, it's not
Richard
often.
Dawkins completely became, I started highly disliking Richard Dawkins because of his transphobia. Obviously, as a trans person, I'm not going to be happy with a transphobe. Oh, you don't know. Wait, would you like to do a collab with me then? You can do a collab with me. You know yourself, right? You do a collab with me.
And that a Cassandra like myself gets to see a bunch of people come around to agreeing that, yeah, she was right all along. So forgive me for this one video where I get just a little full of myself. If you missed the previous video for some reason, my name was in the first Epstein document drop because back in 2011, I criticized physicist Lawrence Krauss for
Lawrence Krauss defend the sex offender, embarrasses scientists everywhere. Jesus Christ, Lawrence Krauss. I remember when his abuse of women came out. God, well, all of these people are such creeps. I cannot believe this. What was this? There's Lawrence Krauss. There were 4 people. They called themselves the Horsemen of New Atheism or whatever. It was very strange. I remember.
for defending his friend, Jeffrey Epstein, years after Epstein was revealed to be a pedophile running a sex trafficking ring. Unbeknownst to me at the time, Krauss immediately forwarded my critical emails to Jeffrey Epstein, and they whined about what a mean bitch I was. And then in 2016, Krauss emailed quite a bit with Epstein.
Look at this lovely face. Can this person raise any suspicion whatsoever? Look at how friendly his smile is. Okay, thank you, left of the box.
Get his advice on how to deal with BuzzFeed reporters who were investigating Krauss's long history of women reporting that he sexually harassed or even assaulted them, because of course he did that. Epstein was able to evade justice for years after it was well known that he was running an international pedophile ring, so surely he must know how to help Krauss wriggle out of some relatively tame attempted rape accusations.
Yeah, this is the world that we live in now, okay? Such accusations are considered light.
Right? I'll be honest, I didn't really expect that there would be more interesting stuff in Epstein's emails that would relate to me, so I didn't even bother searching the new documents. I was wrong. Because helpful followers pinged me on social media to let me know that not only was I mentioned again, but this time it wasn't even directly from Lawrence Krauss. This time it was Richard Dawkins. Now, before I get into it, I'm going to give you a reason to stick around through the rest of this video. Over on Blue Sky, I got a little giddy and I announced that if I got a certain amount of likes, I would share some petty and embarrassing stuff about Richard Dawkins in this video.
My God, those people used to be somewhat respected many, many years ago, okay? Those people used to garner some form of respect. And I'm not sure if about Harrison or I'm not sure about Harris, but I know that Dawkins had some form of respect.
Video. I got those likes within 5 minutes, so I'm gonna do that. But first, I also said that if I got a ridiculous number of likes, I would also share some bonus fun stuff about Michael Shermer, who you may know as the editor of Skeptic magazine and recently ardent defender of fascism. Well,
Jesus Christ. The Skeptic magazine, let me see him.
As the editor of Skeptic.
I'm pulling out. Okay, sounds innocent enough. But we know now she was there blocking traffic for 3-4 minutes and had someone else in the car and was involved in interfering with ICE activity. So perhaps that's why they ordered her out of the car. More context needed, of course.
Magazine, and recently...
Of course, those creeps are gonna just defend the shooting.
The ardent defender of
citizens.
Fascism. Well, it did get enough likes, so... I'll start with a quick little fact about Michael Shermer. He was well known for 2 things at conferences. One, trying to have sex with as many women as possible, who would leave his room with a signed copy of his latest book and a Skeptic magazine pin. And two, for delivering the most boring PowerPoint presentations in the history of conferences. So a couple of my friends came up with an idea to make them more enjoyable. They developed the game Schmingo. Whenever Shermer was scheduled to speak, friends would hand out Schmingo cards with squares like mentions libertarianism and slide with way too much tiny text on it. And we'd text each other our wins, but there was a special prize for anyone who had the guts to actually yell it out loud. And after he was accused of sexual...
Of course he was. All of them are. All of those right-wing pundits are sexual abusers. Doesn't he look like a friendly guy? Random 3PO. New atheism failed so bad that their average leftist is more likely to believe in Thor than be an atheist. Talk about rebound. Turns out you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. I mean, I don't know. I cannot believe that I'm saying this, but it increasingly becomes you can catch more flies with not sexually assaulting them than not, okay? If you want to catch more flies, don't sexually assault them. How's that for a saying? And it seems like that was a big part of the new atheist movement. Weirdly enough, there was a bunch of abusers. I'm not sure if Richard Dawkins abused anyone, but he defended the abusers, which, you know, weird.
We joked about making the free middle square sex pest. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about Dawkins. Before I share the hot tea, I want to give you a brief overview of my history with him. For several years, we were polite to one another at events. I thought he was a nice guy. But in 2011, a few months after my post about Lawrence Krauss defending Jeffrey Epstein,
I
happened to be on a panel at a conference in Ireland with Richard Dawkins called...
Fipio says, there's also the insane racism, Islamophobia, like, these guys were not good at making... Yeah, the Islamophobia is wild. God, which one was the one that said that the Middle East should be nuked? One of those 4 Nights of Apocalypse. And weirdly enough, all of them did this U-turn and said, oh, you know, Christianity is actually not so bad because Islam. Sam Harris also... I'm not sure which is worse. He also was a very bizarrely anti-philosophy guy. Sam Harris had also a weird anti-philosophy crusade. For some reason, he decided that he's not just going to be... He was trying to practice My Hero Academia. He decided that it was not enough to be anti-religion. He had to go beyond plus ultra and decided that he was also going to be anti-philosophy. Like he many times he debated, I think, philosophers. He said that philosophy was worthless, useless, and only hardcore science was the thing. Hardcore physics, data, and philosophy was basically just fifis and religion 2.0. Yeah.
Communicating Atheism, in which I talked about some of the crazy misogynistic hatred I get by being a female atheist in the public eye, including a lot of misogynistic stuff from atheists. And a few days later, on July 2nd, Dawkins posted a comment on PZ Meyer's blog mocking me for complaining about the treatment I get.
Oh yeah, she got harassment, and then look at what Richard, what kind of a respectable scientist would post something like this? This is insane.
Me to a fictional Muslima who isn't allowed to drive and gets beaten by her husband. Wow, misogynistic and racist, who would have thought? Within hours of him posting that comment, I was being flooded with insults.
Listen, we're gonna read it. I don't think she's gonna read it. Dear Muslima, stop whining, will you? Yes, I know you had your genitals mutilated with a razor blade and... Don't tell me yet again, I know you aren't allowed to drive a car, and you can't leave the house without a male relative, and your husband is allowed to beat you, and you'll be stoned to death if you commit adultery. But stop whining, will you? Think of the suffering your poor American sisters have to put up with. Only this week, I heard of one, she calls herself a Skep Chick. And do you know what happened to her? A man in a hotel elevator invited her to his room for coffee. I'm not exaggerating. He really did. He invited her back to his room for coffee. Of course, she said no. And of course, he didn't lay a finger on her. But even so. And you, Muslima, what the fuck? The name is just, wow. Very embarrassing from Richard Dawkins. I think you have misogyny to complain about. For goodness sake, grow up, or at least grow a thicker skin. Richard.
Muslima, who isn't allowed to drive and gets beaten by her husband. Wow, misogynistic and racist, who would have thought? Within hours of him posting that comment, I was being flooded with insults and death threats and rape threats from Dawkins fans, the likes of which I could not have even imagined at the time. My website got DDoSed. Google canceled my AdSense because people reported it as fraudulent. My entire family got doxxed and started getting threatening messages. Basically, my life was never the same. Even today, literally today, the day I am filming this video, I got a new really scary threat. It sucks.
I keep getting comments from Bad Empanadas fans, by the way. So I guess I get harassment from Bad Empanada.
So on July 5th of 2011, after I got the site working, I posted about it in a blog post titled The Privilege Delusion. Now, remember that title because we're going to be talking about privilege again soon. In that post, I mentioned that I thought it was an odd thing for him to have posted at all about this topic, but especially because he had just sat next to me on that panel and heard about all of the really awful things people send me and how it negatively affects me and also negatively affects other women in this movement and how it was turning women...
Very bizarre movement, as it turns out.
...away from the movement. Unbeknownst to me, the day prior to my post, July 4th, 2011, Richard Dawkins reached out to John Brockman with a question. Brockman was a
Oh my God. Here we go.
Powerful New York literary agent who ran Edge.
Hello, Greater End. I'm here after the Super Bowl. You're just in time, Greater End, because we're talking about how Richard Dawkins is in the Epstein files. Random 3PO says, I noticed Bad Empanada posted a new video. Looks like he's tapping the Holocaust denial niche, full blown. What? Okay, we're gonna have to check out Bad Empanada. We're gonna have to do a... Oh boy. He called me a pedophile in his video. Just a reminder. Because I said that he has a reputation for anti-Semitism. Yeah, that's right.
.org, which was bankrolled by Jeffrey Epstein. Brockman served as an important connection between Jeffrey Epstein and all of the various scientists and New York intellectuals that Epstein wanted to meet. And so his name shows up a lot in the files. Here's what Brockman looks like in a photo taken of him along with Steven Pinker, Daniel Dennett, Katinka Mattson, and Richard Dawkins from one of the times that they all flew together on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. So on July 4th, 2011, Richard Dawkins wrote to Brockman, there is a rather nasty young woman called Rebecca Watson.
There you go. A rather nasty woman.
Who seems to be running some kind of witch hunt against Lawrence Krauss because of his defense of Jeffrey Epstein. There are people on her blog talking about organizing a walkout when Lawrence speaks at TAM in Las Vegas. I remember that you told me something of the circumstances of Jeffrey's arrest and that his case is not as black as painted. Might you possibly remind of it? Thanks and greetings.
You know what? In retrospect, actually, the case was not as black as painted, okay? It was not as painted. It was far, far worse, okay? Because at that point, I think the only conviction Epstein had at that point was eliciting a minor for prostitution, not of being a mastermind of a sex trafficking ring for powerful people. So you know what? Yeah, it really was not as painted, was it? Oh boy. Imagine being Richard Dawkins and saying, yeah, this nasty young woman is trying to smear Lawrence Krauss because he defended Epstein.
From Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Richard. Brockman naturally immediately forwarded that letter to Jeffrey Epstein, which is how we can all read and enjoy it now.
Wow.
What interesting timing this was. 3 months after Lawrence Krauss alerted Jeffrey Epstein to my evil machinations, Dawkins has decided to seek out information so that he might hopefully debunk my reporting that Epstein is a pedophile.
Oh my God. Richard Dawkins wanted to debunk the accusations against Epstein. Wow. Oh my goodness.
Just a few days after, he posted an incredibly racist and sexist comment and was getting dragged online for it. Before I had even commented on it myself.
I thought Richard Dawkins was just a transphobe, but here we are. Was actively trying to defend Epstein.
Dawkins is mentioned in a lot of other files, but it's stuff like Epstein talking about hanging out with him and Krauss talking about getting him to the island. But obviously, we already knew Dawkins knew and hung out with Epstein because there are photos. These guys did not care about leaving evidence because, as I mentioned in that previous video, they thought that raping little girls was a normal thing that rich men are just allowed to do. And, were they wrong? But this particular email is very funny to me because it really highlights how I got under Dawkins' skin without even trying, without even knowing. For me, his comment, the Muslima comment, came out of nowhere. And then I watched as he blackballed me from every major skeptic, atheist, humanist organization around the world. His employees let me know that a person could not even say my name in his presence without him blowing a gasket. And one volunteer even related how she saw him scream at the president of American Atheists for suggesting that I be invited to the Reason rally in Washington, D.C.
She became a persona non grata.
Today, obviously, it's more well known that Dawkins is a weird freak because...
Yeah, it is. It is well known.
Years since then, he kind of went off the rails on Twitter, posting...
Okay, I've seen a dog and bitch indulging in full 69. Males of many species, including Drosophila, lick female genitals before copulation.
About dog 69ing and crying because airport security took his honey, etc. But back then, I was really confused about what was going on with him. How had I accidentally pissed this guy off to this level? It was a few months later that a friend of mine mentioned a possible reason for Dawkins' meltdown. And it made a lot of sense, but I never talked about it publicly because it was just a hypothesis. And I really thought that people, if I mentioned it, people would just think that I am a bitchy gossip. But I don't care anymore. So, and it's actually relevant, I think. So I'm going to tell you. At that panel in Dublin, I specifically talked about my experience with rape and death threats in response to women on a previous panel who all agreed that that sort of thing simply does not happen in the secular atheist
content creator that I guess used to be in the new atheist wave. We can check out who she is apart from that. I'm not super familiar. A writer, performer, science enthusiast, and a nerd. I guess that's who this person is.
World. I wanted to offer my own perspective that actually, yes, it does. And the woman who was most insistent that it doesn't was prominent secular writer Paula Kirby. And I addressed her directly by saying that I really admired her writing, and I was surprised by her ignorant take on misogyny in our movement. At the time, I did know that Kirby was involved with Dawkins Foundation, particularly the UK operations, I think. What my friend related to me months later is that Richard Dawkins was, in fact, fucking Paula Kirby.
That is so vulgar. I am never such a vulgar person. Random 3PO, she had a famous incident called Elevator Gate, where a celebrity new atheist guy harassed her in an elevator. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now all the pieces came into place, okay? That's why Richard Dawkins wrote the whole rant comparing her to some Muslima.
Now, when he told me that, I did immediately believe him because I had helped organize prior conferences and I had heard from several other organizers that if you invite Dawkins to speak at your conference, you also have to invite whatever woman he happens to be fucking at the time. Usually, but not always, a blonde, 20 to 40 years his junior. So I had already assumed he had some kind of arrangement with his famous wife of more than a decade, Doctor Who's Lala Ward. But it hadn't occurred to me that he might be so furious with me because I happen to disagree with the woman he was fucking. And fucking her, he surely was.
How dare you disagree with the woman that I am fucking?
Months later, someone sent me emails that were revealed in a court case. You see, in 2010, the Richard Dawkins Foundation sued Josh Timonen, who ran their website, claiming that he was fraudulently pocketing funds.
Disciple.
As part of that case, this email appeared in the public record from Robin Elizabeth Cornwell, the blonde evolutionary psychologist, 20 to 40 years Dawkins Jr., who was
20 to 40 years. Dawkins Jr., I guess, is code. It's code speak for she slept with him, I guess.
At the time the executive director of the Richard Dawkins Foundation. Hi, Josh. I've managed to get a bit of sleep, and while I do need to rush off, I do want to discuss some possibilities. First, I am behind the idea of simply closing the entire forum down, archives and all, after the 30 days. Richard will also back you on this. He really did misunderstand, and his absolute goal was to protect you. One of the things I know extremely well about Richard is he is conflict avoiding and he female dependent. There is a lot of psychology.
Female dependent is such a very straight. What?
At work here, but Richard is extremely weak when it comes to demanding females. While Richard and I are not together any longer,
Okay.
we do have a friendship. It has been under a great deal of strain. When Paula, who has been his mistress now for over 2 years, found out about me, she demanded that he end his friendship with me. It has been a struggle, and I will be very honest here, extremely painful on an emotional level. The irony is that I would never have become executive director of RDF if Richard and I were still in a sexual relationship. I have done my best not to use our relationship to move the foundation in the right direction. And in fact, when Karen was trustee, she did all she could to keep me out of the loop on all financial decisions. She succeeded. Paula will remain an influence on Richard, and for whatever reasons, but she does not have to be the one that Andrew goes to for advice. Unfortunately, Richard had constantly assured me that
This is all very convoluted. This is all very, very convoluted. I don't know. I did not think This is all very convoluted.
he was not involved in the foundation decision-making processes, but apparently this is not the case. The fact that RD excluded me from the discussions and directly misled me is a matter that I need to clear up with him. What I don't want is for you to feel in the middle, nor do I want you to have to take sides. There is no reason to take sides. I am not giving RD any ultimatums. That is not my style, and given that RD is very conflict avoidant, he is not going to be comfortable with having to go back to Paula and tell her that he is not taking her advice. So I'm in a bit of an awkward position because while I will throw myself in front of a train for you and Andrew, I
Poor RD.
also would do the same for Richard. And then she talks about what to do about their internet forum. Extremely weak when it comes to demanding women, huh? Interesting. By the way, Lala did eventually leave Dawkins, as noted in this exchange between Deepak Chopra and Jeffrey Epstein. Subject line, karma. Remembering all of this, I decided to see if Cornwell is in the latest Epstein drop. And guess what? She is. It turns out that Cornwell claims that she was in
This whole Epstein thing is just becoming weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder by the minute.
attendance when one of Lawrence Krauss's many accusers said Krauss rubbed up and down her leg at an event. Krauss reached out to Cornwell during the BuzzFeed investigation in the hope that she could testify that in fact it was the woman who was being a creep, and
L equals Renz Krauss.
Krauss turned her down, and she's probably just angry about it, and that's why she's claiming he touched her inappropriately. Krauss then forwarded her testimony to the BuzzFeed reporters, who sadly were unable to verify her account. And then obviously Krauss forwarded the entire exchange to his best friend Jeffrey Epstein, famous pedophile, who, by the way, is...
Oh, hello, Maya Atkinson. Wait, is this another raid? Hello. Are we being double raided? Hello. Welcome. Would you like me to introduce myself? Would you like me to introduce to you what I do, etc.? Hello. Hey, dunking on devils is a great start. Thank you very much. Okay, I will introduce myself. I am Lucy Haze. I am the biggest Polish Jewish trans streamer, and I have 3 channels. I do gaming and dunking on devils on this channel. I do very serious news reporting on my second channel, which is called Lucy Has a Network. And I also do war journalism, where I go to Ukraine and I cover the situation of children in Ukraine during this war. I cover the situation of children living in Ukraine, and I cover the situation of the children that were kidnapped by the Russian Federation and rescued by various organizations within Ukraine. And I also cover the situation of the children that are in the occupied territories. So I do that. So I have second channel for news, and I have a third channel. Yes, I know it gets a little bit messy, but I also have a third channel for my videos and documentaries, my interviews from Ukraine with the families and children. So I guess I will link the network one here. This is the network one. I've decided to do a very clear separation between these things so that you know what to expect. Here you can expect me to dunk on creeps such as Richard Dawkins because, wow, okay, I said it before, Richard Dawkins used to have a shred of respect within, I don't know, somewhere. He used to be respected for his Selfish Gene book and some other books. And he's just a creep and a transphobe. And I guess an acquaintance of Jeffrey Epstein, which I did not know. So you can expect that from here. And gaming and art, because I also draw. I animate. I also an animator a little bit. And news I do on the network channel. I cover the war, I cover international politics, I cover domestic politics, which for me is Polish politics. And of course, I go to Ukraine, which I'm trying to gather funds to go to Ukraine next week and to continue doing interviews. I'm preparing a bigger documentary style material based on Kharkiv. So that is what I do. This is who I am. Okay, let's continue watching why Richard Dawkins is very strange. Strange guy who decided that it was a great idea to attack this person because she criticized Lawrence Krauss for defending Epstein. Thank you very much, Titan Uranus. And yes, because I'm Polish, I am going to read Titan Uranus. Yeah, I have lucyhasa.org/live. If you want to help me with my journalism, consider subscribing on the page. All of the money that I get, I use for food and for journalism in Ukraine, which is quite expensive. Okay, let's continue.
He's clearly getting fed up with Krauss's shit by this point. Finding that exchange made me wonder if there was any more funny Krauss stuff in the latest drop, and boy, is there. First of all, we could figure it out from that first drop of emails, but
Krauss is a real creep. I've known for a long time that Krauss was a creep with his sexual assault allegations, but I did not actually know that Richard Dawkins was such a creep. I did not know that. I basically started realizing that Richard Dawkins was insane when I've seen his transphobic takes, which suddenly, in the light of the Epstein files being released and how much transphobia is in those, how much fetishization of trans people is in those, it all suddenly makes sense. The J.K. Rowling transphobia makes sense suddenly. The Richard Dawkins transphobia makes sense suddenly. It all just clicked into place. It's just like suddenly like, why the hell is Richard Dawkins so transphobic? Isn't he supposed to be the smart scientist biology guy? It didn't make sense to me. And now, of course it makes sense now.
One really makes it clear how Jeffrey Epstein could not stand Lawrence Krauss. For instance, in 20...
Oh yeah, and Lawrence Krauss was... this is really weird. Lawrence Krauss, it seems, was too much of a creep for Epstein, which, wow.
2010, Epstein gave Krauss money to invite a bunch of intellectuals like Steven Pinker and Richard Dawkins to a conference, but a lot of the invitees said no, and so Krauss started inviting fillers, and then he started CCing Epstein on plans to go scuba.
Titan says, I vote for David Worley, who was a big part of outing Krauss. Wait, hold on. Can you get me a conversation with David Worley about outing Krauss? Can I get an interview with them about that? That would be good. If I could get an interview about the whole thing, that would be wonderful. Apparently, I'm a pretty good interviewer, I've been told. Maybe they could agree to come to this stream and do an interview. Yeah, that would be nice. I've been on In Time twice. Okay, let's continue. Let's continue seeing why Epstein considered Lawrence Krauss too much of a creep to associate with.
Diving, at which point Epstein finally snapped and told him to stop fucking around. Then in 2013, Krauss forwards Epstein a fan letter he got saying that Krauss, Dawkins, and others inspired this kid, and Epstein replies, "Great, it's you, Dawkins, and others. Is this the best use of your brain and time?" Which clearly cuts Krauss to the quick. Maybe not. But
why inspire? Okay, I'm not even gonna make that joke, but I think Epstein just found Krauss annoying because he is super yeah, but you know, I feel like it's, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of bizarre, a bizarro situation. You might be a creep like me, but you're just an annoying creep.
Is one use. It is also easy for me, and also it seems an exciting good.
Wait, who was the fourth person? There were four writers of New Atheism. There was Dawkins, Krauss, Harris. Who was the fourth? Who was the fourth person? Who was the fourth New Atheism guy? And was he also a creep? Yes, Titan Uranus. I need to network more. Daniel Dennett, not a creep. Whoa, okay, one of them was not a creep. Chris Hitchens. Yes, Christopher Hitchens. Krauss wasn't in the band at the time. Christopher Hitchens, I don't know. I feel like I have certain... God, I hope Christopher Hitchens was not a creep. He wasn't a creep. Christopher Hitchens was not a creep, right? Even though he was pro-invasion of Iraq. I feel like Christopher Hitchens was not a creep, right? Please tell me he was not. His brother, oh God, Christopher Hitchens' brother is so bad on Ukraine. He is so bad on the topic of Ukraine. At least I hope Christopher Hitchens would not be as bad on Ukraine as his brother is now. Daniel Dennett. Well, all the other ones are creeps apparently and friends of Epstein.
Science is one of the things professors can and should do. I just do it globally instead of in a classroom. Epstein then dunks on him again, calling...
Does anybody know what Richard Dawkins' reaction to all this actually is? Has he actually said anything? Is Dawkins actually just ignoring all that stuff? Did he just decide to go silent on it? There's a picture of Dennett on Epstein's plate. Okay, of course. Of course. I checked. David Wellesley is on In Time Discord server, as you are, of course. Could you network me so that we could have an interview? Titan Uranus? I'm pretty sure he blames trans people. Yeah. I actually wonder if there's some public response. Sure, I'll just... Thank you. I wonder if there's some actual public response from Dawkins on these. Should we look it up? Dawkins response to Epstein files. Is there any? Let's see if AI can find any. Did he respond? No, I don't think there's a response.
Him a performer at...
Donald 3PO. Dawkins' public relations agents, not to mention his lawyer, no doubt advised him remain silent on the whole Epstein thing. Dr. Kip Davis says, to be fair, Marin, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Yeah.
At which point Krauss waves a little white flag and begs him to stop. Understanding how much Epstein loathes...
But you know what? You know what? I would say that abusing women, like Krauss did, and then defending Epstein, like Krauss did, means a lot. Okay, I would say those things mean a lot. And then, okay, for Richard Dawkins, defending Krauss for defending Epstein, that also says a lot, in my opinion, in my personal, unqualified opinion.
Krauss is essential to...
The jury's out definitely when it comes to Mr. Krauss and Mr. Dawkins. in my opinion.
Truly appreciating this next email from 2017, which reveals that at some point, Krauss assumed that Epstein was going to help him make a vampire movie.
Did Harris have any history of sexual assault or misconduct? Did Harris have any of that? I know Harris is a aggressive Islamophobe, but does he also, and also a very weird anti-philosophy guy, but does he also have sexual misconduct under his belt?
Called Vampire Noir. My favorite Krauss email thread, though, is this one, where he is trying to retain a lawyer to help defend him in his university's investigation into the BuzzFeed allegations. And while he's chatting with the lawyer, at the same time in other email threads, Epstein is telling Krauss to just drop it and not hire.
I think this makes some sense. Thoughts? Other than, of course, I am wrong 100% of the time. I was planning to make this first meeting an information session where I could ask questions, but not necessarily respond at that time to the allegations.
A lawyer. And finally, Krauss gets all confuzzled about who to listen to, so he actually emails the lawyer he hasn't even hired yet and says, "Hi Justin, I have a slightly unusual request. I have been advised through much of the BuzzFeed
That is such a weird thing to do, by the way. That is this lawyer thing with Krauss is so weird.
Both before and after by a friend who is also somewhat infamous. His name is Jeffrey Epstein, and you may
somewhat infamous. Oh my God, what a understatement of the century. Somewhat infamous, the biggest child trafficker in history. Somewhat infamous, yeah.
Know who he is already. Bottom line is that Jeffrey is not only friends with most of the famous people from finance to business to Hollywood who have either been brought down during Me Too, and he also...
Yeah, have Lucy on. You should have me on. We should do a nice collaboration, especially since I'm trying my best to do, what do you call it, networking, you know? I'm trying my best to do networking, to grow from a micro streamer, because as you can see, I am a micro size streamer. Look at Dick Dawkins socials. He hasn't said a word on Epstein. It's all transphobia and so, okay, of course. I just, that the transphobia, as much as it makes sense now, it still feels so weird. The transphobia from Richard Dawkins, it just feels so weird.
Also speaks regularly with people ranging from the awful White House people who he is friends with to Ken Starr, etc. He is concerned about exactly how we play this, as he thinks because of the variety and number of different things being discussed in the media and online, that this will be considered beyond Title IX. I should say that all indications I have thus far do not suggest this. But anyway, Jeffrey would
see, I show a called I do a show called Transfactual from time to time. Might be a good opportunity to make some mischief. Yeah. Exactly. Especially since I'm now also trying to get money to get back on HRT, because I'm kind of forcefully off of it now, unfortunately, because of a tough time.
Like to speak with you, as he has concerns about my having counsel who directly represent me in interactions with the university at this time versus having someone to act as an advisor and draft letters that I can send. I will pay for your time to do that if necessary. Would you be willing to do this in the next day or so? Holy shit, Lawrence Krauss is so fucking stupid.
Also, Lawrence Krauss is kind of stupid. I thought he was more intelligent than that. I used to think that he was a creep, but not a total idiot. But these emails just, they expose me to a whole new Lawrence Krauss, to be honest. I guess you don't need to be all that intelligent to be a physicist, huh? I don't know. My doctor has been ignoring me. Let me check now. Texts from him, because like to get a new doctor, I would have to drop money for a visit, and I actually don't have it right now. I was trying to, because I'm in private DMs with my doctor, but he's been just ignoring me for over a month. For over a month, I've been ignored by my doctor. Nothing from him. Oh God.
He's being investigated for sexual assault, and he told a lawyer that he hasn't even hired yet that he's not sure whether he should listen to the lawyer or his friend, famous pedophile rapist Jeffrey Epstein. So he wants them to speak to each other and work it out for him. The lawyer...
That is such a bizarre thing to do.
actually agrees to talk to famous pedophile rapist Jeffrey Epstein on behalf of Lawrence Krauss. And eventually the lawyer is like, look, this is getting extremely annoying and you're wasting a lot of my time. At which point Krauss finally agrees to retain him. I assume the lawyer welcomed this relationship because imagine all of the great stories you're going to get.
And that's actually bothered me quite a lot, that the most powerful people, that the most celebrated people are horrible creeps that abuse others sexually. Do I even have to point that out, that it happens on a small as well as large scale, that even in the streaming ecosystem that has been a problem? I'm surprised the lawyer talked to Epstein. I mean, technically speaking, there's no harm in a lawyer talking to Epstein. The lawyer could say, oh yeah, I agreed to talk to the creepy pedophile guy, you know?
Out of somebody that stupid. Oh, and also all of the money you'll get out of somebody that's stupid.
I still believe it. Yeah, well, he still gets a lot of views, actually. He gets a lot of views. I don't think his reputation, I don't think his whole thing was dented by it in the slightest. In the texting minor thing, I don't think it did not leave a dent. I think, I guess it's the kind of situation where he is unironically too big to fail. If he was a smaller creator, that would have harmed him. If it was someone, I'm thinking if Lonerbox had such a scandal, it would be over. I think someone of Lonerbox's size would have been over if he was texting a minor. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think so. I think that it's a matter of size, yeah. And it is disgusting. I mean, if anything, the whole Epstein mess teaches us that the more power you have, the more outside of the rules you operate. You're too big to fail. Like, remember, when Epstein was arrested, he was allowed to work normally during the day. He was allowed to leave prison and work. That is the most insane part from the whole thing to me, that he was just allowed to gallivant during the day and do whatever, and then was just asked to return to prison at night, apparently. Random free PO. It was kind of foreshadowed when Vosh started growing again after the tax folder stuff. Yeah, but I think I do have to say that in my opinion, the Vosh tax folder stuff is in a different league than texting an actual real minor, right? I think as bad as the tax folder thing is, I feel like the texting a minor thing should be far more damaging than that. No? Because in that case, like, a real person is involved. The real harm is involved. It's just bizarre.
Also included in the Krauss-Epstein files was another name I wasn't expecting. Ron Lindsay, former executive director of Center for Inquiry, which, fun fact, merged with the Richard Dawkins Foundation some time ago, at which point RDF's executive director at the time took over. That was Robin Blumner, a brunette woman 20 to 40 years Richard Dawkins Jr., who had assumed that...
They're different scales, but it's the same phenomenon in microcosm. Yeah, I guess, but it's just very discouraging. Basically, a person can do almost whatever, and they just go on as if nothing happened.
Role from Edwina Rogers, a blonde woman, 20 to 40 years.
Doesn't Destiny have like ongoing court cases as well against them? Oh, look, it's another person that slept with Richard Dawkins.
Richard Dawkins Jr. But Ron Lindsay was the head of CFI in 2011 when Lawrence Krauss publicly defended Jeffrey Epstein. That was also the year that Lawrence Krauss was a featured speaker on a cruise for CFI, when he propositioned a CFI guest and asked her to join him in a threesome with his partner. When this latter information came to the attention of CFI employees in 2014, thanks to the woman's friend reporting it when the woman herself was too embarrassed, they begged Lindsay to stop inviting Krauss to events, particularly events when
Don't invite this creep to events. Keep him away from women.
Suspecting women might be stuck on a boat with Lawrence Krauss. In full disclosure,
thank you, better than Ember.
One of those employees was my boyfriend at the time. He loved working for CFI. That was his dream job. And he believed in their mission of building a more secular, rational world. But he was horrified when Lindsay not only refused to do anything about Krause, but actually invited Krause back for another cruise and made him an honorary board member.
Oh boy.
The final straw came in 2013. Women at CFI had worked really hard to put on their second annual Women in Secularism conference, and Ron Lindsay insisted that as president of CFI, he should be able to deliver the introduction. He did so, and he used his time on stage to spotlight criticism of feminists for silencing male voices.
Oh yeah, those evil feminists are silencing male voices.
Because those men have privilege. In his speech, Ron Lindsay bemoaned the situation where the concept of privilege is used to try to silence others as a justification for saying, shut up and listen. Shut up because you're a man and you cannot possibly know what it's like to experience X, Y, and Z, and anything you say is bound to be mistaken in some way. But of course, you're too blinded by your privilege even to realize that. This approach doesn't work. It certainly doesn't work for me, said the man addressing an audience of women at the Women in Secularism conference that was entirely organized by women for women. It's
amazing.
Enforced silence.
What an amazing opener for a women's conference. Hey, have you women considered that you just complain too much about men silencing you? Huh? You try to silence us, actually.
He said. Dogma spread by the likes of the religious and, of course, the Marxists. This was incredible to watch live. I tweeted at the time about how ridiculous it was, and Lindsay immediately went on the attack, confirming that I am, in fact, one of the mean feminists.
One of the Marxists.
The next day, I wrote a blog post explaining why it was a pretty tone-deaf way to start a women's conference. Which
2013 feels like such a long time ago, by the way. It feels like eons ago. Feels like so many decades ago now. Feels like ancient history to me.
Infuriated Lindsay. That evening, there was a fundraising dinner that speakers were expected to join, but Lindsay wasn't there. He was up in his hotel room composing a blog post responding to me by saying I inhabit an alternate universe and saying my recent smear may be the most intellectually dishonest piece of writing since the last communique.
Imagine living in an alternate universe because you're against sexual harassment of women.
Issued by North Korea. He insists that he is on the side of reason and evidence, and I am just doing identity politics. That attack, which was immediately bolstered and echoed by the men who were already harassing me, was what finally pushed my boyfriend at the time to quit his dream job at CFI. He held out because the board of directors said that they would investigate the matter, and a month later, they met and announced that they would do nothing. The hosts of the podcast he produced for them, Chris Mooney and Indre Viscontis, also left, and happily their show was quickly picked up by Mother Jones. So, how did Ron Lindsay end up in the Epstein files? I'm sure you've already guessed, but yes, it's because of Lawrence Krauss. The BuzzFeed reporters reached out to Lindsay to confirm or deny the story told to them by several employees, that the employees went to Lindsay with the details of Krauss sexually harassing a woman on the cruise and asked that Lindsay stop platforming Krauss, which he refused to do, leading to at least one employee's resignation. The reporter also asked him to confirm that another employee told him that Krauss had cornered her in his hotel room and tried to molest her. Lindsay responded by telling the BuzzFeed reporter that he had heard about the cruise incident from just one employee. He randomly mentions that Krauss was in a very loving relationship at the time. I'm not sure what that has to do with the fact that he invited another cruise attendee into a threesome with him. And he says he immediately got the victim.
I mean, it means that he wanted the threesome thinking of his beloved partner. I don't know. I don't have the insight into Lawrence Krauss's mind, thank God.
Information and called her. The victim substantially confirmed what the employee said and said that she did not want to pursue the matter further. Then he talked to Krauss, who denied the allegation. And so, what more do you need? That's the end of things. He decided that meant it was perfectly fine to invite the pedophile defender / threesome lover to cruise the Galapagos with CFI. And he's sure that was the right decision because he received no complaints about his conduct, just like the 0 complaints he received from the previous cruise. Sure. Oh, and yes, he did acknowledge that the employee did tell him about the assault in the hotel room, but she didn't seem too scared of Krause and didn't volunteer to make an official report about it. So again, not a big deal. Then he clarifies for the BuzzFeed reporter that my boyfriend did not quit over all of this. No, it was just because Lindsay had a public spat with me, the girlfriend, which is a whole other story tangential to your Krause piece. So I will not get into it here. But it's not tangential, is it? Because guess what happened after Lindsay wrote this reply defending Lawrence Krause?
Yeah.
I mean, you already know, don't you? Lindsay forwarded his defense of Krause to Krause, who promptly forwarded it to his
Epstein.
best friend, famous pedophile rapist Jeffrey Epstein.
Of course.
It's not tangential that our public spat started with Lindsay literally using his privilege as a rich man to get on a stage at a women's conference that he did not organize and blame feminists for silencing men. It's not.
Speaking of feminists, I have such a callback to the past creator to dunk on after this. You're going to be pleased. You're going to be pleased with my choice, okay?
Tangential that he then used his online stage to dehumanize me and stir up men's rights activists to punish me for daring to criticize him. It's not tangential that he did all of this in a clear attempt to protect male supremacy in his movement, to castigate mouthy broads like myself who dared to say, hey, maybe we can do better. Maybe we don't need.
I think Jeffrey Epstein is a little bit past just doing better, by the way.
Famous rich men who treat women and girls as objects, as prizes to win and then dispose of when they're inconvenient. Maybe we can build a secular movement through progressive humanistic ideals and good people doing good things for their communities.
Or alternatively, we could just build a sex ring involving powerful people being invited to an island and abusing children. You know, it's good to have your options varied, I guess.
The idea that someone would think that, let alone say it out loud, terrified Ron Lindsay, just as it terrified Lawrence Krause and Richard Dawkins and Jeffrey Epstein and every other mediocre rich man who was trying to coast by and just enjoy their lives. They were furious because it's like, what do you mean you don't need us? We're rich, we're famous, we have parties on tropical islands where all of our wildest dreams come true. And I don't give a fuck. You guys suck. You're idiots. I hate you. Just look at how scared of me Lawrence Krause is. In one email, he's talking about some letter he wrote to try to defend himself from the BuzzFeed article.
God damn, Lawrence Krause. Is she gonna read it or do we have to read it?
I couldn't find it, but I did find this evidence that he spent a lot of time working out exactly how vaguely he could describe me when trying to castigate me as ringleader of the movement to impugn leading male atheists, because
Lawrence Krause was never leading male atheist. Come on, he was never that.
Rebecca and her crowd are very
a depressing thought.
Vicious, and I don't want to start too much of a fire there. Yeah, you know what? You were fucking right to be scared of me, you disgusting, pathetic sex pest. I hope you never again do a lecture where at least one person...
Wait, does he still do lectures? Is Krause actually still active? I just... Whenever there's people like this that I knew about years ago, I keep wondering, okay, are they done? Or are they still active? I know Richard Dawkins is somewhat active, even though not nearly as prominent as he used to be. His reputation, I feel, has gone down, has been flushed down the toilet. And the weirdest thing is that the person doing the flushing was Richard Dawkins himself. It's just very bizarre.
In the crowd doesn't ask you exactly what you did on Jeffrey Epstein's island. And I hope that Ron Lindsay really enjoys having a little cameo in this latest release, really cementing his legacy as a man who enthusiastically helped run interference for a man who openly and gleefully harassed and abused dozens of women over the course of decades and who kept company with the absolute worst pedophile
of all time
in human history.
Yeah.
Also that Ron could keep his boys club running without the pesky interference of women like me saying, hey, maybe maybe you could stop talking long enough to listen to what we're saying. Hope it was worth it.
Insanity.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for
I
watching.
think it would be, at this point, it would be easier to just list how many people are not in those files than to how many people are in those files. I think everybody is in those files. Everybody's in the Epstein files. Every single one of them.